Okay.
Oh, darn.
Nope.
Johnson,
Here.
Lees,
Here.
Young,
Here.
Bovert,
Here.
Crowner.
Here.
I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move.
Oh,
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have a consent agenda.
Motion approved is presented. Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So I'll declare that we have a public hearing now on the proposed city budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025. Any comments? Seeing none. Close the public hearing. Well, if you, that's separate. Seeing no, then I will close the public session, and we will move on to our first reading of an ordinance dealing with the repealing ordinance 541 and granting Interstate Power and Light Company a non-exclusive 25-year franchise to supply electric energy to West Burlington and require Interstate Power and Light to pay a franchise fee to the city.
You're doing all three hearings first, and then new business.
Yeah.
Do you need this? Do you have this, Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any discussion on this first reading?
It's a public hearing.
It's a public hearing, yes. Okay.
Discussions
None?
at the,
Discussion?
under new business.
What?
Discussion would be under new business. Your
Okay.
Honor.
All right, then I'll close that public hearing and go to our third one. Council hold a public hearing on the question of the city's intention to repeal Ordinance 542 and adopt a new ordinance granting Interstate Power and Light Company a non-exclusive 25-year franchise to reconstruct, maintain, and operate plant and systems for the distribution of natural gas in the city of West Burlington, and require Interstate Power and Light Company to pay a 3% utility franchise fee to the city of West Burlington.
Your Honor,
Yes.
you skipped number one.
The public hearing on the city budget?
No,
he's
the
doing-
resolution.
He's doing all three.
I was
public
doing the
hearings.
public hearings, and then I was going to
Okay,
move to new
okay.
business, if that's
Then the-
acceptable.
Then the business is to
Thank you.
approve the resolution.
Okay. Any discussion on public hearings on this? If not, we,
Mr. Hawkett's motioning to.
all right, do you want to come up and speak?
I just had a few questions about the franchise fee. Can I just stand, or do I have to sit, or?
Whichever you want to do.
Okay. It's been a while since I've been here, but I've heard, and I've talked to John, talked to Andy about some of these projects, and I guess we've got a $6 million project coming up for pipes that, you know, needed repairs or that type of thing. And I was wondering, do we have a hard estimate on that, or do we,
6.5 million. We have a preliminary study done.
how many years will it take to repair that?
That's the question. You can do it in one, or you can do it in stages, and they've broken it out both ways for us.
Okay. How much per year will it take? And when did we know that the pipes were,
It'll depend on how it's bid and what sections we do.
okay? Then my question is that on the 3% franchise fee, I guess 1%'s already being collected in the sales tax, so it's 2%. And I also wanted to address some of the comments that I've been hearing that just simply aren't true. And plus, the way you're going to burden some other people, too. I know it sounds like only 2%, but it's probably going to be 5% before too long. I mean, we probably opened up something that we won't be later on be able to close up. Some of the things that I've heard is that renters don't pay any property taxes. The property tax is built in to their rent payment. We also have heard that's the only way that you can tax schools and churches. And the question I'd have, who pays those taxes? Who pays the water bills? Who pays the taxes? Who's going to pay this fee or the water bills and that type of thing for the churches? So you're not really just taxing one individual. You're going to tap not only the resident or the renter for that, but when they go to their church or go to their school, they're also going to have to pay that fee. Somebody's going to have to come up with that approximately $300,000 a year. Is there a better way? That's my question. So some people are going to get double and triple tapped on this. I'm afraid we're going to be double and triple tapping the very people, the good people that go to church and go to school and that type of thing, the people we really want to support. Anyway, I'd hope you'd repeal that, or at least put a time limit on it or something. But I don't think we should double and triple tap the people that are going to our citizens who are either renting, who are paying the property tax built into the rent, they're paying paying it when they donate to their churches, and they're paying it when they go to school and pay those bills too. Anyway, that's all. Sure.
Dan, can you please repeat what you said that you heard people were saying? Because that's the first I've heard of that.
Well, I've heard these comments that renters don't pay property taxes. They do.
Dan,
It's built into the rent.
Yeah.
We don't absorb it.
explain the double, triple tax thing. I'm not catching that.
Well, let's say I own a property. I live in my house. I'm going to pay this extra 2%. Okay, then I go to church and donate to my church. I'm going to pay that 2% again because they pay by donations. And if you go to school, not only depending on which school you're talking about, whether it's up here at the West Burlington School or whatever, they're going to have to pay that tax unless they're tax exempt. But the water bills on the churches, I've heard everything.
Well, Dan,
If it's true that the churches and the schools are also going to have to pay it because they're not paying those bills now, they're not paying anything now, why are you double and triple tapping the people that are either paying the taxes, donating to churches, or even donating to the private schools?
that's not really what we're doing. And I'd like to expand on that if you
Okay.
will allow me. If you get a check, if you're working and you get a check and you come home and you go to Walmart or you go to Target and you buy something, you pay tax there. So, and if you go buy a car, you're going to pay tax there. And if you go down to the courthouse and you get license on your car, you're going to pay a tax there. This is no different than being taxed by what you use. This isn't a tax me 2, 3, 4, 5 times down the road, no more than what income tax is, or your sales tax at anything that you purchase. You pay taxes on everything you purchase. What we're simply doing here is all entities will pay for what they use, for the gas and for the electricity. I have thought this over and over and over, and while you're talking here, I'd like to, if you have a better idea, I'd like for you to tell me how we can come up with $5-6 million for this project and not have an income for it. I
understand.
really expect and
We had a long
would like to have an
conversation the
answer.
other day, but I understand the dilemma, and I realize that these repairs need to be made. Can you tighten the belt?
Well,
Or we expand it. I doubt if they could do the entire project, and I'll admit, I don't know a lot about the project, but that's a long,
It wouldn't happen in a year. It'd just be let as one project.
right, but the money
You
doesn't
may-
have, you'll pay as you go as they complete each stage of it. How long will that take?
I don't know.
You know
I
what
don't
I mean?
remember. Yeah, it may be in the study. I don't remember. But
Is it something that's going to start this year?
no, we would need to do, the first thing we'll need to do is the final design and pay for that.
I just hope you'd reconsider. It's not, just property owners or people that have their utility bills. It's a little weird too. You're using your gas and electric bills to pay for electricity or for sewer and water. I've heard both. Is it sewer or water or mainly sewer?
Mainly sewer.
Mainly sewer. It's a big project. I get that.
Both, but it's sewer project's the big one.
Right. I guess you've had some issues here lately, and I know it's a big project, but let's not tax the churches. Let's not tax the people that are already trying to donate to the churches and that type of thing. And the people going to schools, why hit them again? And then when they go home, they're going to be hit again. I know it's only 2%, but there's got to be a better way.
Dan, I agree when John asked you, if you come up with a better idea, you contact us, because this is what we've been talking about for at least a couple of months. In my understanding, this problem's actually been aware of for a while. I don't know how long, but a while. And then if it's not taken care of, we're gonna have a bigger problem. I'm on a sewer system, so I'm not even involved, but at the same time, I understand it's for the best of the city to, especially if something goes down, if it fails, I think people will be more concerned about sewage than, the cost and the finance of if you have to get an immediate loan, the interest rates. So we're trying to avoid all that.
If you did it by rate increases, the churches and the schools are going to pay the rate increase on sewer. That's an option.
The two main options that we discussed already and discussed several times during the budget process, GO bonds, most likely, or, and that would cause, what was it, $1.10 on the tax rate to pay that back, something like $1.10. We also considered the state revolving loan fund, or state revolving fund, SRF funds, and that would be paid back. It has to be paid back with rates. So sewer rates would go up substantially. You would be paying more. We didn't run those, but you'd be paying a lot more than you would now. We already get complaints that water and sewer is high right now. And one business coming in showed us how high it was compared to their last project.
We understand that we've got a project that needs to be done. Sewer needs to be fixed. We have a rough estimate of about $6 million. Is that about right?
6.5.
Okay. I don't know if this is still available, but we were talking years ago having to build a new sewage treatment plant that was going to triple fees for the sewer. We came up a way for paying that without that triple fee.
It was one of those two options.
That's what I was wondering. Are those options still available?
That it had to be one of those two options. I'm guessing it was SRF loan rather than a bond, but it had to be one of those two options.
We can talk later on it. I didn't bring that up with you earlier, but we can talk about that later. But if there is another way to pay for this, if I can talk to Greg for a little bit to see if that's still available, would you consider not rolling this thing back? Have you already passed a franchise fee?
No.
First reading.
There's 3 readings. This is the first reading.
So you got 4 more weeks.
This is the first reading
But
of 3. The council can change the ordinance at any time or not do the ordinance at any time, including up to the final reading of the ordinance.
Greg, am I correct that to raise the same amount of money as the 3%, that it's $2?
Say that again?
Huh?
What was your, I don't,
If you
not following
raise
your
the
question.
property tax levy to make
Raise
that
the
much money.
Was it- I think
Raise
it
the
was-
same amount of money on property tax.
I think it was
as what we're doing on the local
$1.10. I'm not sure if I brought that sheet.
Or not the local.
I think it was $1.06.
I think that sounds right.
I thought it was 256.
That's if you don't take in that 1% that we're already getting.
Yep,
So
it was
you go back.
$1.57, 10 cents, $1.05, 15 cents, $1.57, 20 cents was $2.10, and 25 cents was $2.62. All over $1, and a couple at 2.
But see, the local option sales tax now that we have.
And council considered these items during the budget process.
30,
Is,
we don't get the whole
are you
dollar.
And you-
3% just on gas and 3% on electric, or both of those combined?
Both of them.
Each one is
Same
3%?
answer.
Yes.
It's not 6%, it's 3% on it.
That he just said, yes.
It's
Well,
not 6%, it's 3% on your bill,
3% total.
on your bill.
That's
Yes.
all I need.
Yep.
Up to, okay, 5. So your question, John, is that you and I already talked about it. If you go out, and which I talked to Greg, and get business to come in,
Needs to be at the mic.
we should have a loan.
We can't hear you, Rick.
Rick, we can't hear you.
There's people that's trying to find out.
Rick, we can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Okay.
Can you come up to the microphone?
Oh, Mike? On John's thing, talking about the business, is to bring business in. And you all know that instead of bringing apartments in, but that's Dandy's side. But if you bring go out in Chicago, St. Louis, New York, they're all going to pot. And all those people, a few, and I was just up in Chicago and even St. Louis and talked to you and a few of those, is that people are looking places to go and find places. I mentioned to Greg, but you got busy and then you had to leave that day, which, 6 months ago. But to go out and try to get businesses to come in here. I mean, I was part of the Honda and the Trailways to get those, and that only took 15 minutes on a handshake to get those two businesses in here. I think we only got, Casey's coming in, and that's about it. Awful lot of apartments, but I don't see where people are going to work at around here unless something else is coming in.
Apartments
The only
actually
thing
saved.
that I always felt too,
Apartments-
huh?
Apartments saved substantially last year. Now they're paying the multi-res rate rather than the commercial rate.
And Greg, we've also been to 2 different businesses in the last 2 weeks where they've actually hired more employees than the existing employees. So we have companies in our own town that's growing now too.
Okay. What's the average income in those 2 cities?
Des Moines County, the median I sent you was
You asked me 50.
81, and was low 50, and the mid 80, but
I
Not
don't
really-
remember.
not
I'd have
really
to look
relevant.
it up, but you did.
I
say
know
that.
at an hourly way along, that was quite a few, was 13 something an hour. So I don't know if it's boosted up. I mean, it's just like the General Electric plant, I'll use General Electric, I know it's ABB, but, the chambers should have somebody working that in. You're paying money to
They
the
do.
chamber
and
hasn't.
a number of visits already.
Well, I know we got visits, but that's been quite a while.
We're already doing everything you've spoken to tonight, everything.
So, okay,
Everything.
but nothing,
I can't deal with what
Nothing's
happened
going
prior to me, but I'm telling you, we're doing everything that you just said already.
okay. So we've gone to Chicago, New York, and
Gone there? No.
placed theirs and talked to people, and, I mean, I always had
We
conversations.
did a housing demand study, which
I always
showed
had
us.
conversations with guys from Chicago that ran the mall, and the guys from Detroit that ran the mall.
Excuse me, Coach. Greg's only been back for a short time.
But
And-
he's been in Muscatine, he knows
Yeah,
how that
he's-
handles. That's a little worse than what this town is.
And I just know that he's taken our community in the right direction. For about 14 years, we've been sort of stagnant in growth. I'm confident that this is going to change, and you got to give him time. It takes a while for to develop the contacts and get things coming back in our motion, and you're starting to see it.
The only thing I in is that, there is several people here, and I know that people want older people to move out of their houses to go to an apartment. But old people, like myself, don't want to go to an apartment yet, okay? Even though everybody wants to kick us out and so that they can just have younger families come in and that stuff in there. But I'm not ready to go, and there's several people here not ready to go, but they live on Social Security. And that is one thing when I was on city council, is make sure that the citizens knew that they were paying Social Security to keep the taxes down low and everything else. Mike brought up a problem. Yeah, we do have a problem. So every year, you always fill out things to do. So you need to tear that paper up and go to that then.
And do what?
Go to what we need to do of a 5 point, 6 point some million.
This was long before me,
I know.
long before me, these
And I-
issues.
And Randy
It-
probably had a
yeah.
conversation with everybody
That,
else,
and
but
we all know
I
the
looked
age.
at all the sheets and everything else, and I couldn't
It's
find
like
anything.
Ringo said, we've been sitting here stagnant for years. Nobody's done anything to try and get revenue in here, and all we're doing is depreciating infrastructure that just keeps going downhill.
Oh, revenue, I
mean, we're to a
I
point,
brought right revenue in.
I'm telling you right now, if we had it here, we would have the money to take these projects on. We don't have it. And the projects just keep getting bigger and more expensive and more of them.
Well, yeah, I can, yeah, never mind.
And that's,
We won't get into political.
And that's,
That's why.
that's included in the city council goals.
Because I mean, taxes and taxes on people, you're going to have the taxes raised, government and income tax and that stuff in there, food and gas, and, you know, we can go on because it's always advertised on TV and everything else. It's just that a person, let's say, of Social Security, of some women that did not work in our generation, that sat home and their husbands worked, live in some of these houses and that stuff in there, and probably go between $1,200 and $1,400, some even $900 that I remember going in the bank and that stuff in there. And they still live in some of these houses. We used to fix houses up and that stuff in there, and I don't know if we still do that or not. But apartments from a person that has it paid for, probably a few years, and then if they move to an apartment, it's going to cost you $800 plus to do it. Now, I understand that these are $500, these new ones that are supposed to come in to help out. Is that what the price is, 500?
I don't know what the final,
Or 500, 800?
yeah.
But,
Rick, you moved off of our taxation issue into apartments.
It's
So
the-
could you go back to the taxation? Because that's what we're covering right at the moment.
The franchise.
oh,
Franchise.
Franchise fee.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'll just leave it at that. But main thing I want to know is 3% or 6%.
3%.
So it's 3%. You can go ahead. So finish what you're doing then.
All righty.
Rick, you've sat on this side of the table,
Yeah,
okay?
long
And-
time.
and Dan, you've sat on this side of the table. And it's not that you're not familiar with how things work. I mean, you may not know today, you know, because it's been a year or so since you've been here, but when you were on the council, did you see any way of raising funds to do these projects that were brought up, that we're trying to do now, without raising the taxes?
Yeah, we didn't raise the taxes.
Did you have extra money then?
You had about 15 to 17%. Now, we're going to get off again here.
No, this
So we're having
is.
15,
this is-
17% in the general fund. I know you guys want to build that up, or the mayor does. But, so we're at 22, 23% right now. You were at 29%. For some reason, it dropped down. Don't know what that was for. But you're trying to build that back up to a 30%.
That dropped down because you were keeping the levy rate low by using your reserves. That's
Whatever
how,
we did,
that's where
where-
it went.
So my point is, you know, we spent down some of the reserves, and that was great. I mean, because, you know, we survived and we made things happen. And yet, it happened even when the years I was gone. But the projects didn't get done. They were brought up, and you didn't have the extra money then. Now
Oh,
the
we had
projects,
that- we
now the
had the-
projects are worse.
We had to take care of that
Now the projects are worse.
waste treatment.
Yeah, and.
That
and-
was the one that was killing us, which that lady should have moved back to someplace else.
But where I'm,
Because if we waited probably 2 more years, we wouldn't have had it done it. Maybe 3.
Wouldn't have had to do
Because
what?
the other guy was in office. You weren't there. But that's, yeah,
Not sure about that.
oh, I guarantee that.
So now we have them breaking, and the money is no better than it was when you guys were on there. You couldn't
Well,
come up with
it's just
them.
like the two meetings before.
But we do have more of a
Two
tax
meetings
base now.
before,
We do
we
have-
had an incident on the bicycle path, okay? And then you come up and said that the engineer messed up. You're the one that wants to let the engineer take care of it and that, and then all of a sudden, you voted, let's just take 17,000 out of our kitty and pay for it, and we'll worry about it down the drain.
Well, the project was a whole lot more than the 17,000.
No, you just had to take 17,000 to pay for this little screw-up that went on.
But they put money into it with that. You know, the project, I think, was 37,000, I believe, for the lights.
Loops.
38.
You're referring to the
And they
traffic
paid
loop.
17 of it.
Yeah,
So
so you got
know as
refunded?
well as I know, on this side of the council, you have to compromise sometimes.
So you
to
got
get-
refunded?
Yeah, it's partially refunded.
Yeah, we got a
Oh, okay.
partial refund.
I
We didn't pay for it all.
I haven't been here.
Yeah.
So I assume that, you two were
That's why I
sitting there
voted for it.
arguing and saying no and whatever, because I was sitting over here
Yeah.
about $17, that you said, let's just go ahead and pay it.
Yeah.
I think Andy
The first-
said no.
The first change order is slated to be on next week's agenda. And the deducts and the ads are things that we've, larger items are things that we've already discussed. But there will be a formal change order for some of those items. Some of those items are quantities and would be dealt with at the end of the project. But we have a number for them.
So
Back to
my
the
next
franchise
question,
fee.
real quick, my next question is, do you believe that everybody in the city should pay for it or just property owners?
Do what?
If this project has to get done, do you believe that it should just be property owners? Or do you believe it should be everybody that uses the sewer and the water? And the gas and electric and that stuff?
Should be everybody, shouldn't it?
Should be?
Shouldn't?
I agree with that, 110%.
I'm not arguing that I don't pay. I mean, I usually do pay, but everybody should pay. But
So tell
then
me-
you get on the apartment size, I think Dan was bringing it up, that I remember they got cut out on certain stuff.
You've been on here on this side before. Give me any other way that we could do it and everybody pay. That you just said should pay for the gas and the electric and the sewer and the water and stuff. Give me a different way. And maybe Hans has a way, and maybe he does. And I'm glad that he stepped in here. Because I respect that.
When Rick gets done, I'll have a few comments.
Awesome.
You can come up and,
Come on up.
come on.
Hans Straussel.
So your 5 minutes is up.
Okay, 215 Broadway.
Council rules is 5 minutes
minutes
for
per
public
person.
hearings. We've gone well past that.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Is it-
I got a question I'd like to have
The
an
general
answer.
public needs to know with the local option sales tax, how this affects the local option sales tax. Because what you're doing right now, everybody, that seventh penny that we're all paying gets put into a big pot. And just, kind of keep it simple, say countywide, we collect $100,000, which we all know it's like over 5 million. But years ago, I had this question put to the state, and this is what they came back with. West Burlington collects roughly 27% of the local option sales tax in the county. Burlington collects 63%, and the rest of the county collects about 10%. Now, when it comes back to disbursement at that time, Burlington roughly got back to 63% that they collected, and West Burlington got 7%, and the county got 27%. So most of the local that seventh penny, most of it goes to the county. Now with the franchise fees, West Burlington is going to get to keep the whole penny, not 7, 10, or 7% of the penny.
Correct.
So you're going to lose a little in local option sales tax, but you're going to gain quite a bit on the franchise fees. Now, personally, and I've talked to Greg about this, if I had the druthers to do it, personally, I like paying the property tax because I can take that off of my income tax, you know, at the end of the year. But for West Burlington to gain, I think the franchise fee is a better route to go. Just think about it. For years and years and years, I've tried to talk to the legislature about changing the way the law works. And that's like talking to that window or that wall. And even when you enact the franchise fee, and if there's too much objections to it, instead of going with 2 or 3% right off the bat, can you ramp it up? Go 1% this year or next year, then 2% the following year. Now, I don't know what that's going to do to your budgeting.
They've got the new formulas that we're saddled, restricted on growth now. This is the first year that we've had to deal with that. And you can only grow a certain amount. Even if you were grow at 10%, you're only going to be at the lower rate.
But the other thing that, and I was watching on TV, and this kind of gets a little upsetting, is, we always like to play the blame game. It's not that previous councils didn't do anything. They did. They did a lot of things. And, unfortunately, you guys are stuck now with having to deal with that $5 million, wastewater treatment, putting in new lines. But over the 34 years I was here, we've built 3 sewer plants, 3 of them. And those were all due to the state changing the criteria. And I'd hate to see that happen again. So you are being proactive. But I think you need to sell this on the local option sales tax. And I know Dan was always interested in getting them to change that formula on the local option sales tax. Right here it is. The county's taking most of your dollars. This is a way to get some of it back. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hans brings up a good point on the 1% local option sales tax. If you could collect it for everything that the city of West Burlington does, you'd be way ahead. But you're not going to do it just by bumping utility bills.
No.
That's not the whole thing.
We know that. It's
Okay.
just on the utility bill, that's what.
That's just the utility bill. But utility bills are already high. Sewer bills are already high. State's trying to help everyone out on their property tax bills. We also have commercial business. Our assessments have gone up 13% on top of one stretch. It's went up 4,200%. And all we do is mow the grass on it. It's tough for everybody. But there has to be another way. I'm sorry I didn't get up to talk to Greg about, they were talking about tripling the sewer fees years ago to put in a new sewage treatment plant. We avoided that by finding another way to fund it. Now, I don't know if that option's still available or there's another path, but let's not replace one tax with another. And a utility tax to pay for sewer just doesn't quite make sense. Gas and electric for sewer,
But it does make sense.
and we don't have the hard estimates back yet. Just please reconsider.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to debate, I'm looking at it from the way the people are, paying the bills. There has to be another way. I know you have a problem You found out about it a couple of months ago. Something needs to be done, but we haven't got any hard estimates back on what needs to be done. Let's not implement the tax until we find out what needs to be done first and what it's going to cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Rick, Hans, thank you all.
Okay, so I will close out our public hearings. I'll go to new business. Item number 1, consider resolution approving the proposed city budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025.
Your Honor?
Yes.
May I speak to it before the vote?
Certainly.
I just want to remind everybody, do you have the actual one? That
The resolution.
the resolution includes the max levy at 25 cents. The resolution needs to be changed. When you make the resolution, make it at 10 cents, which is what is budgeted and planned. You have to reduce it tonight to do 10 cents rather than 25 cents.
I saw that, but I didn't see your memo regarding that, but
We talked about it, but, yep. I just wanted to do a reminder. Thank you.
That'll just be an amendment to the budget, right?
No, you can make a motion.
With the motion, all right. Trees. Motion on this?
trees. I make a motion to approve the fiscal budget with a levy rate of 1010.
Support.
Motion and support. Roll call vote?
I'd like to make a comment.
Certainly.
First, please. I'll go in more to the ordinances here when we're on them, but first of all, Greg, I think in general, this is a fairly tight budget, as I've said to you privately. There's not a whole lot of fat to trim in there. Maybe 50,000 would be about it that you and I have sat and talked about. I don't see a reason for us to raise that 10 cents at this point in time. So I'll be voting no against that at this point. But fund balances are in general going up with this. We're covering most of the items that we need to cover, minus some capital projects under this just a flat $10. So I'd love to see us just keep that at $10 straight without the 10-cent increase. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused on a comment that you made, Andy, and I don't mean, I just want to make clarification.
Yeah.
Article in the paper, you said we had fluff, you said up here we had fluff, and now you're saying that we have a pretty tight budget and it's only $50,000.
It is fairly tight. We would have to cut some sort of services to go back and cut much more than $50,000, which those are discussions we did not have at this table. So to drastically cut to be able to cover the basically 2% increase in that with the 3% rate, we would have had to go back and discuss some kind of cut to whether it be the pool or library expenses or some kind of service that's provided to the citizens. However, we didn't really have that conversation. The tax increase, which was proposed by yourself at 5% originally, was discussed after all of that.
So just to make clear, we don't really have that much fluff as what was brought up.
It depends on if you think some of those services are fluff or not.
Okay. Because that's a huge comment to make to people that it made the budget look to some people I've talked to as we're not doing our job here. And I think
when
we did do
when
a
you
good
talk
job.
about doing, again, originally a 5% increase, which was the first recommendation you made, I do think that you owe it to the citizens to go back and talk about those kind of big items and what can be cut before you just do that large of an increase. And again, if you were putting that on the levy, that number looks a lot more than just 3% or 5%. That's a very large number. And so I think we should have had more discussion about that before that was just tacked on at the end.
I personally thought that when we were doing this, my first experience of doing this, but the whole process, you're always depending on our departments to give us what they actually need. I agree with John. I think some of the people that worked hard on these budgets to present to us, when they did hear the word fluff, they felt offended that they wasn't producing a good working model of financial responsibility to provide to us, which we depend on these people to do
And
for
remember,
us.
our original budget came to us at $10 even from the city administrator with 0% on this franchise fee. So that was what was brought before us. So once we started to change that, and you brought out a 5%, which then moved down to a 3% change, that's when, if that was going to be the discussion, we should have been looking at those items in that budget beforehand.
Well, it wasn't that I proposed a 5%, it was discussed 5%, 4%.
At the beginning of the
3%,
budget-
2%, 1%. So it wasn't that it was just, hey, go to that. You know, it was a discussion for all of them.
Greg?
And we
At the
can
beginning
watch
of the budget process, we start with the PowerPoint, and then we go on from there. And I specifically noted in there what what the budget included, and that we needed to talk about taxes and franchise fees. That was my recommendation, that we talk about them. Then we go through each and every department budget, and there's an opportunity for any council member to take something out of there and put it in our last meeting, our last work session on the budget, which is where we talk about all of those items that we don't agree with that are in the budget, and decide if we're going to keep them or take them out. And that's your opportunity to do that and to reduce the budget.
Yeah. Do you know how many items in 5 years we've said no to at that point in time?
It's your choice.
I agree, but getting anybody to say no is pretty tough. I only know of one item in 5 years that we've removed from the budget at that point in time. The ATV for about 10 grand, 12,000 for the fire department. So it's a tough conversation, but we need to be up here to do that and have that tough conversation. And I didn't want to go into the franchise fee on this, but part of this discussion started with that money being very loose on what we could use it for. And by continuing, and I will say you were one of the people leading that charge, to narrow that down to what we can use that for, I feel a lot better about it. However, as you know, the problem being that tomorrow we can change that, or the next council that comes in can change where those funds are spent. There's no way for us to lock that down currently. So while I'm typically the guy that's sitting here saying, hey, we should save money first, right? I've been saying that for years. In this case, we can't lock down that money to that in this process. Where if you went the other way and did an SRF loan in the beginning, started the project, and then bonded for that, you could tie that money just to that specific project. Also, for 5 years, I've been told that sewer must pay for sewer and water must pay for water, and these things should be self-contained, and all of a sudden, we're not doing that anymore. We just kind of threw that out. So I believed all those years what I was hearing from Mayor Hans and previous council. And
You didn't have this tool at that time.
Yeah.
You had a franchise, you did not have a franchise fee. You did not have that tool to utilize.
I listened
Somebody
to
could
you
have
all
brought
that
it
told
up.
me that those
Right.
things should be contained within, so.
Ideally, you pay for everything out of water that's associated with water, and everything was sewer out of sewer.
Yep.
Our rates are high at this point in time.
Absolutely.
We have some critical projects.
Yep.
And this is the way that the council chose to move
And you
forward
know,
with those projects.
part of my issue from the beginning is, and Kelly, you and I sat in here one night way too late, talking about how I don't want to take that money that should be saved for this project and be spent on a trail or a sidewalk or.
I don't either.
These things that I like, and we have got to a better place by that, but me hollering about it surely helped get there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would still love to lock that down to that, and while we're saying that in a resolution today, we could change that tomorrow, and I don't like that. So I would rather have it specifically tied, and the only way to do that is through doing an SRF loan on a project that large or something equivalent to that. So that's why I'm against that, because we could change and spend that money any way we wanted to tomorrow.
And India, to add to that, you were one of the reasons why I pushed for this to be tied to this project. So you are right, that, you know, this discussion that you brought up and everything was partially because of you. And when I asked everybody sitting here at the table and there's three of us, or three people that's gonna be here for the next 3 years, if if they see anything happen in the next 3 years of changing that for, and nobody spoke up, that tells me that it's gonna probably take a year or year and a half to get the project going, so that means that the funding is still there, and you need to do the funding ahead of time. So, once again, I think the conversations that we had, the tough conversations, really led us to something better than what we had at the first.
But this current council at that rate can get about $600,000, $700,000 out of the 6.5 million, which I bet you're gonna find is closer to 8 million by the time we actually go out and get actual bids on this again, right? That's cost increases we've seen go up on every single item have been about that much. So we're only gonna pay for a little drop in the bucket on this. Now, again, in general, do I like to do that? Yes. But in this case, I can't specifically earmark that money for that project. Even if we say so today, somebody else can change that tomorrow.
But we can spend some of it, Andy, at the time,
Right.
you know, when we start
Yep.
going through the plans and everything, that money's gonna go out to the companies. that
Yep,
are
we
doing
could
that.
start engineering projects.
So
Yep, we could
Paying
start it.
that out so that that fund doesn't stay up, but it's paid out as we go.
Yep.
But
The other thing I think that we ought to keep in mind is, I know you can't project ahead what's going to happen in the future, but we have to trust our citizens to be able to say, we don't like this, we're going to elect a new city council member or whatever to come in here and make sure that we keep that money going towards that. Or if the citizens are really opposed to it, they'll elect somebody else.
Yep. So kind of my last point I want to make is who actually gets hit by this? And we've had discussions about, well, me as my homeowner might not, and we had people mention about schools and churches, and I actually agree with the double taxation part of that, because it's different than the examples you brought up on buying a car and those things. Well, you are paying taxes, but the church and the school is not paying taxes and will have to pay
property
this.
taxes.
Right.
Right.
Or sales tax, or you said you go to this, well, they don't pay the tax when they go buy that stuff. They're
But they
tax
use the
exempt.
service.
Right, but they're tax exempt. So your other issue is that our commercial got hammered this year. They got hammered in valuations. It went up $32 million. And the majority of these funds are going to be also paid by those same people. So can they bear it? Maybe. But they just got hammered, and now we're going to hammer them again. So
That's the part about it.
But they're actually going to pay less, substantially less, and we reviewed that.
Commercial won't.
Based on,
$900.
based on the tax rate and.
Commercial is
And the
not.
changes.
they're.
Oh, commercial.
Small commercial
Oh,
place.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, a small 200,000 commercial place, yes. But your
Right.
big
I mean-
guys
Yes, apology.
are going to pay a lot more.
Yes, you're correct. Yep.
So that's my other problem with this, is we are going to double hammer that guy, and that's the jobs we want, the jobs that we need, and now he's getting hammered by the state side of it. We didn't do that, but we are going to go back and double hammer him on this. So I don't like doing it. I wish I could tie the funds directly to this project and keep them there. That's all I would like to do differently. You asked what to do differently, that's what I would do.
We're still on our first one, so we've moved into.
I'm good with all three, you're good.
All right, so, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Covert,
Aye.
Crowner,
No.
Motion carries. Consider the first reading of ordinance repealing ordinance 541 and granting Interstate Power and Light a non-exclusive 25-year franchise to supply electricity to West Burlington and receive Interstate Power and Light's company to pay a franchise fee to the city. Any discussion on this? Ask for a motion then?
I motion that we approve the first reading of the ordinance of 541. Repealing 541 and granting Interstate Power the non-exclusive 25-year franchise for electric.
We're talking
Number 2.
the new contract? My computer went off. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Greg, you want to explain that a little bit more?
I don't have a
I'd prefer if you had a
second.
motion and a second.
Huh?
I don't have a second
Oh,
at this
second.
point. You second it? All right. Motion and a second. Greg?
Section 4 was the main item that you discussed. And what we've discovered is that it's really a moot point, because we have two projects that would be in that time frame. And they were noted in that information, but Kimberly, they, on both corners, they had to do a 1-foot section for that street, and that's about 6 years ago, and it has 4 years left. And we have no plans to touch that area. Agency and Broadway project was probably 7 years ago. There's 3 years left on that, or more than 7 years, I think you said. But again, there's only a couple years left on it, and we have no plans to do anything at that intersection.
So the part that I'm having problems with is, as I brought up before, or last 2 meetings, is the look back. And the gentleman sat up there on the screen and told us that there was not a look back, and there was. Okay? And he was the guy from Alliant that's supposed to have all the answers, and he knew the question before he came to the meeting.
That's how he interprets it. That doesn't mean that that's accurate.
But he should come to the table with the right answers, or, because he knew the question before. And then he didn't. And my question is, do we really know that there's only 2 projects? That's what this letter is, but just like he was wrong before, is he wrong again?
We've talked and thought back. I mean, there's, the things that we have planned to do are not affected by this ordinance.
Once again, he was wrong before on that. Is he wrong that there's only 2 projects?
I can't think of any others. I don't know if Mike can.
No.
Just to piggyback on that, not talking the argument on the tax side of it, just talking about that contract. I thought we'd also discuss not just the look back, but anything going forward, moving from a 10-year window to a 5-year window. And am I reading that correct, that they're not entertaining that at all?
From a precedent perspective, they don't want to change that. That's what their current contracts have with other communities, and going forward, that's what they're doing with other communities, yes.
I mean, I can understand they wouldn't want to, but.
But for the benefit of the city, it
We don't have
should
that-
be. And if
we don't
it
have that.
wasn't for the franchise fee, we wouldn't even be having that issue, because we would, right now, they're holding us hostage with the fee, is what they're doing. When it came to them in 2 more years when the contract's up, they either move out and somebody else moves in, or they accept our offer. And right now, we don't have that opportunity. We're at their mercy. And I don't like that. I don't like being held hostage for that. I think that's horrible on them.
This is just the first reading, as you know. I encourage you to move forward with the first reading. You can always continue to have discussions. I replied to this, and that we'll see what they say.
Mike, I'm not sure I've ever heard you talk about this 5-year versus 10-year. Do you see a big difference? Again, not the look back, but going forward.
In all of my time here, there's a couple things that we've had to have moved, and we've never had to go back and do anything with them. And any of the projects, if we have to lower or raise something for a water project, a major one, or a street project, and as you know, we've pretty much went all around. The streets outside have all been ground and redone, and Broadway was a big one. Now, when we come to this force main project, I'm sure there's going to be some utility issues and some things will have to be moved.
Yeah.
But as far as most of all of our water main projects, we go deeper or above or whatever to not have that conflict with them, to have them come move in. There are contractors on certain projects that they have to help, it holds us up to get that done at that time, but I don't ever recall something we've asked them to move and then had to come and have them move it again. I have never seen that.
But if they do, now we're gonna get charged for it, if we've already done it in the past 10 years. And we don't know positive, it's being told to us that there's a couple projects, but also it was told that there wasn't a look back, and there was, and it was in writing, and they even told us that, so. Do I trust that? Absolutely not.
I think a good result of that, though, is, Johnny, is it points out the importance of a good comprehensive plan going forward. What are our projects we think we're gonna do for the next 1 to 10 years, or whatever, our up to 2045 ideally, which is the comprehensive plan we're paying to put together. And having a decent comprehensive plan should allow us to plan and think 10 years forward. For example, if we're gonna put a new force main along North Gear, we can also think about crossings that we may be adding, that may be the crossings across that street that could be impacted by the force main, that may be affected by electricity and gas. And when you see the housing that's being put across the street, it would seem logical that we'd have some work there. And my point in saying this is having a plan going forward and executing the plan and funding the plan helps us avoid wasting money as we go. And I think that's part of the reason that supports the need for a franchise fee also. So let's get a plan, let's work on our plan, let's do it.
Well, I agree with that, but if things cross things, and, you know, they're holding it against us when we didn't have that before. Is it a moot point like Greg says? It very well could be.
Yeah,
It could be.
we're fortunate.
If there's nothing else there, but the question is there? Because they were wrong before. Do we want that there, or should they not have it? That's my question. And I'm not willing to vote for it unless I know those answers.
You have those answers at present.
Huh?
You have the answers at present. That's their.
At present?
I don't think that's going to change. I've replied to it, but I don't think it's going to change.
No, Greg. Last week, we had the answer that there wasn't a look back.
I understand.
And there was.
Mhm.
Okay? This week, we got a letter saying, hey, there's 2 projects. Is there more? Is there anything else? You know, and why do we have to have that? And I don't like being hostage to that.
Well, you won't have a franchise fee either then.
Well, once again, there's the hostage. If we don't, if they don't put this, if they don't write it back the way it was, like they will do it in 2 more years, because then they don't have no leverage on us.
They'll still put that in there.
No, they won't. If not, if you won't accept it.
Well, what are you gonna do? Say we're not gonna have any gas or electric here?
Yeah, and let Mid-America come in at half price.
I see.
That doesn't work that way.
Mid-America doesn't want to put in the infrastructure to bring their stuff in.
We can go back and look at all the projects we've done in the last 10 years, and I guarantee none of those are gonna be redone.
So why don't I have that in front of me since I've asked for it past 2 meetings?
We asked them to provide the projects that
That
would
they
be
moved
affected
things
by
for?
it. And we have an answer, 2 projects. And I'm holding them to it.
And everything else starts
I'm
from
gonna,
today.
we're gonna add this to the file, or to the agenda, and include it in the minutes.
You even said in my office, if we did a project and within 10 years, we did the same project over again, we should have to pay for it. If we're not planning that well. And that's what they're saying too. They want you to encourage
Going
places
forward,
to
we
go.
can do that. Looking back, when we wasn't
Those are the
planning
two-
on it,
and those
because
are-
the contract says that now, that we don't have to look 10 years back, is totally different, Kelly. It's totally different than what the
Well, we
subject
did look
is.
10 years back, if that's the case, and I think you're still fine. I don't know, we're not gonna redo those two projects again. Or any of the last 10 projects, pure projects we've done in the last 10 years,
John, what kind of a
doing those
guarantee-
again.
What kind of a guarantee do you want from this?
Alliant?
Or anybody about the projects that we've had in the last 10 years?
One of two things.
Mhm.
I want to guarantee that these are the only two projects,
Mhm.
and they will write anything else off that may show up. That's simple enough, if that's what they're telling us.
Mhm.
But they're not saying that in this letter. They're saying that, hey, here's two, but it can be interpreted that there's more. But here's two that we know of.
So all we need is a statement that guarantees us that we could use in court,
Then you got my
essentially,
vote.
right?
Then you got my vote.
Since we're on the first reading,
Can
Can
I
we
ask
have- yeah.
one quick question on the specific, Mike, this agency, that was an agency in Broadway, correct? Are you concerned at all? I mean, we've talked about a sidewalk or a trail right through that exact section. Are you concerned about that specific thing?
What they would have had to move for us was what's under the street.
But that was on the other
that
side of
was
the
a full-
street, too. This was.
But that was a full depth removal, sub-base, I mean, that was a deep hole.
So if we go
If you're
through,
doing a trail, you're only gonna take
On
out
top.
what you need to pour them.
Okay.
It should not be at that depth at all to get into that.
yep,
Now, there
Yeah.
probably will be other conflicting utilities when we go through that aren't as deep that we'll have to address at that time.
okay, that's all.
John, they have told you exactly what is done and have said it. Since January 1, 2013, there have been electric road moves on Kimberly and Melville and one gas move on Agency. Except for these three roads, any future road project will be eligible for a road move right now. That's
Okay.
it's in there. We're covered, and there's not any projects other than the two that we're aware of. It's in there. I think it's exactly what you want.
I will admit, I was focusing on the rest of it, and I did not see that line. Sorry.
Dale?
Okay.
Okay. Pass this first reading then? Okay. Roll call?
Lees,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Covert,
Aye.
Crowner,
No,
Johnson.
Aye.
Okay, our third item is consider the first reading of an ordinance repealing ordinance 542 and granting Interstate Power and Light Company a non-exclusive 25-year franchise to supply natural gas to West Burlington and require Interstate Power and Light to pay a franchise fee to the city. Motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve.
Support.
Motion and support. Thank you. We're really discussing the same thing as we did the last time. So unless there's more discussion on this, I'll go ahead and call for a roll call vote on this.
Young,
Aye.
Covert,
Aye.
Crowner,
no,
or Johnson.
Aye.
Lees.
Aye.
Motion carries on that. So we've had our first reading on both of those ordinances. Our fourth item of business is a consideration of a resolution approving salary for non-union personnel for fiscal year 2024-2025.
motion to approve.
Support.
Motion and support. Thank you.
Is this that 4% we discussed?
Yes.
I didn't, I didn't see it, and I had to get my calculator out.
Further discussion? If not, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Covert,
Aye.
Crowner,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we have any citizen inquiries at this point? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned from